This is my video update on this Saturday, midday, March the 30th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with Elensky's interview to CBS News. I talked about this briefly in my video update from yesterday, but we have some more interesting statements from Elensky during this interview with CBS News. And the most interesting statement that Elensky made was where he indicated that he is ready to negotiate with Russia based on the 2022 borders. He's kind of ready to negotiate with Russia based on the 2022 borders. We're talking about the borders that were being negotiated during the meetings in Turkey. It looks like Elensky is ready to go back to the deal that was in place in Turkey in 2022 before Boris Johnson flew to Kiev and then told the Elensky regime to scrap that ceasefire, that negotiation, and to fight on until Russia is defeated. That is what Boris Johnson ordered Elensky to do, and Elensky did it. Well, now it looks like Elensky is ready to go back to revisit that deal in Turkey, and they would like to discuss the 2022 borders with Russia in Switzerland. There's a lot of talk about some sort of a peace ceasefire negotiations taking place in Switzerland. So this is what Elensky said in the interview with CBS News this week. He suggested there was no need to recapture the territory exclusively by military means, claiming that the Ukrainian forces should at least restore the 2022 status quo. We will not have to deoccupy all of our territories exclusively by military means. I am sure when President Vladimir Putin, loses what he has occupied since 2022, he will fully lose the confidence even of those countries which are still in doubt whether they should support Ukraine or not. So it's an interesting statement, or confused statement, coming from Elensky to CBS News. I am sure when Putin, loses what he has occupied since 2022, he will fully lose the confidence even of those countries which are still in doubt. It sounds to me like this hint from Elensky that they're ready to talk ceasefire in Switzerland based on the 2022 borders. It seems like this is another trick to get Russia to freeze the conflict, to pause the momentum that they have going, get to Switzerland, talk about a ceasefire, and then Putin is going to lose the support that he has in the international community when they agree to. I believe that what Elensky is saying, I'm trying to figure out what Elensky is trying to say in this statement. I guess he's saying that if they agree to something based on the 2022 borders, then Putin will fully lose the support that he has in the international community, and then he's going to lose all the other territory. That appears to be what he's saying, but it doesn't make much sense. It doesn't sound like a solid plan. There is no plan. There is no plan. Elensky has no plan. The collective West has no plan. No plan. He's just throwing stuff out there at this point. I think the main motivation in putting this out there to CBS News, that he's open to discussing 2022 borders, is without a doubt connected to trying to get Russia to pause what they're doing, and and then they can try to scheme ways, to figure out ways to sabotage or subvert or asymmetric warfare Russia into giving up more territory or something like that. This is a very, very confusing statement from Elensky. Doesn't make much sense to me, but I think the main point to take away from his statement is that he's not talking about Crimea anymore or anything like that. He's not talking 1991 borders. He's now talking 2022 borders, and I think this is the first time that Alinsky has talked 2022 borders, even though he's muddling his statements and he's not making much sense. He's still talking 2022 borders, and then he also talked about how delivering a defeat to Putin will bring him to the negotiating table. Will bring Putin to the negotiating table. He said, despite the failure of Ukraine's counteroffensive last year and recent gains made by Russian forces along the front line, Elensky claimed that once Russia suffers battlefield setbacks, Putin will lose the power within his country and will be forced to seek dialogue. And when he will be ready for the dialogue, undoubtedly the international conditions should be the liberation of our territories, the territorial integrity of Ukraine, Elensky added. He says one thing, then he says another. He's talking 2022 borders. Now he's talking about a defeat, a setback for Putin. If you deliver a military setback to Putin, then you'll get him to the negotiating table, and then he's going to give up territory. It's all confused garble coming from Elensky. If I didn't know any better, I would think Elensky is doing something in his spare time, which is making him talk all of this gibberish. I don't know. Just saying. Anyway, Peskov, he was asked to comment on the negotiations that the collective West is talking about in Switzerland, and Elensky's statements to CBS News. And Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Kuleba, was also talking about negotiations taking place in Switzerland. And here is what Peskov said. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba suggested on Friday that Kiev could engage diplomacy with Moscow following the Swiss-hosted peace summit, a date for which is still to be announced. However, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Kiev is contradicting itself and that Moscow will not accept a set of rules developed by someone else. Yeah. Moscow's not falling for it. This whole Switzerland peace event, peace summit, negotiations, let's talk 2022 borders. This is all about getting Russia to pause its operations because they're worried about a Russian offensive. Russia hasn't telegraphed or announced. Russia has not officially announced any type of offensive, or even unofficially talked about any offensive. Unlike, say, the collective West with the spring-summer super-duper counteroffensive, where they were going on and on and on about the summer offensive. It's about to start the summer counteroffensive. Tokmak, Melitopol, Sea of Azov, Crimea. They were telegraphing their offensive 3 months in advance, and Russia's doing none of that. They're completely quiet. They're not talking about whether they're going to go on the offensive, whether they're not going to go on the offensive. Nothing. They're not saying anything. All of this, all of the worry and the panic about a Russian offensive being planned is coming from the collective West. Probably, it looks like Russia will do something big. My opinion is that Russia is going to, without a doubt, create a buffer zone in the north of Kharkov, in these areas, in order to safeguard Belgorod. But who knows if they're going to do anything more? Who knows if they're going to do anything at all? The Russian military and the Putin government, they can keep their mouths shut. The collective West, they can't. They have to talk and talk and talk. They have to reveal all of their plans 6 months in advance, and then they wonder why the Russians were prepared. How did the Russians know that we were going to go to Tokmak and Melitopol and try to make our way to the Sea of Azov? How did they know? We were only talking about it for 6 months, nonstop. But yeah, Peskov's like, whatever, man. He's like, this is all nonsense. We're not going to be dictated terms by Ukraine or by the collective West. The Russians have been saying from the very beginning of the special military operation that any negotiations have to accept the realities on the ground. And with each passing day, the realities on the ground get better for Russia, and with each passing day, the realities on the ground get worse for Ukraine and for the collective West. And the realities in 2022 in Turkey were much better for Ukraine than they are now. So why would Russia go back to Turkey 2022? Why would they trust the collective Western Ukraine to even honor? If they were to go back to 2022, why would they trust the collective Western Ukraine to honor any type of deal based on the borders that they were discussing in Turkey in 2022? Not going to happen. It is not going to happen. So the Washington Post, they put out an article, an opinion piece by David Ignatius, and this opinion piece has the title, Elensky, we are trying to find some way not to retreat. Elensky, we are trying to find some way not to retreat. From David Ignatius. And this article from the Washington Post, this article from the Washington Post is basically saying that Alinsky is sending a message to the United States, to Congress. If we do not get the 61 billion, then we are going to have to retreat. That is what this article is basically saying. What the 61 billion will do that the 300 billion, 400 billion, 500 billion before that did not accomplish, I don't know. I don't know what difference 61 billion is going to make that 300 billion did not make. But Elensky is telling Congress via the Washington Post that if they don't get the 61 billion, they are going to have to retreat. Let me read you some of this article from David Ignatius. And this article is more of a story, of a movie script than it is actual journalism. But here is what the Washington Post is saying. President Elensky delivered a stark message to Congress in an interview on Thursday as Russian missiles were pounding southern Ukraine. Give us the weapons to stop the Russian attacks, or Ukraine will escalate its counterattacks on Russia's airfields, energy facilities, and other specific targets. That's an interesting threat. Is that a threat from Elensky? Give us 61 billion or else we're going to attack Russian targets? Probably not the best statement for Elensky to make given the recent terrorist attacks in Moscow, but that's what Elensky, according to the Washington Post, is telling Congress. Give us money or we're going to continue to attack airfields, energy facilities, and other strategic targets. He does say strategic targets, but that's the statement from Elensky to Congress. The article says that Elensky, the actor who became a wartime president, now totally inhabits the role. He wore the habitual dress of a Ukrainian military sweatshirt and combat pants. He looked less haggard here on his home ground than he had about a month ago at a security conference in Munich. He seems to relish being the symbol of a nation at war. He wore his habitual dress of a Ukrainian military sweatshirt and combat pants. That damn sweatshirt, man. Oh, that green t-shirt, that green sweatshirt. Elensky number 5. Use code green sweatshirt. Get 20% off. Oh, man. When this conflict eventually ends, and it will end, when it ends, I'm very curious to learn one thing, just one thing, This is the only thing I want to know when this conflict ends. And this is it. This is the only bit of information that I want when this conflict is over. I want to know if when you open Elensky's closet, does he have like 100 green sweatshirts and 100 green t-shirts? Or is it just one green sweatshirt and one green t-shirt that he washes over and over again? I'm very curious to learn this information. When you go into Elensky's walk-in closet, what do you see? Like 100 green sweatshirts? Or is it just a couple of them and he rotates them? He washes them and he rotates them? I don't know. Just curious. Just curious. Oh, let's see. The Washington Post says, to describe the military situation, Alinsky took a sheet of paper and drew a simple diagram of the combat zone. If you need 8,000 rounds a day to defend the front line, but you only have, for example, 2,000 rounds, you have to do less, he explained. How, of course, to go back. Make the front line shorter. If it breaks, the Russians could go to the big cities. You know that Ukraine is in trouble, that Elensky is in trouble when he has to draw diagrams. You know, he's in real big trouble when he breaks out the pencil and paper to draw diagrams. Oh boy, if you need 8,000 rounds, if you need 8,000 rounds a day to defend front lines, but you only have, for example, 2,000 rounds, you have to do less. You see, Congress, we need 8,000. 8,000 rounds is what we need, but we only have 2,000 rounds. So 8,000 minus 2,000, 8,000 minus 2,000, 0, 0, 0, 8 minus 2, 6,000? 6,000? We need 6,000 more rounds. We need 6,000 more rounds. 2,000 plus 6,000, 0, 0, 0, 6 plus 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 8. 8,000 rounds is what we need. We have 2,000. Give us 6,000 rounds. Elensky doing the math on a piece of paper as he makes the case for $61 billion. We are trying to find some way not to retreat, Elensky continued. After the Russian capture of Avdiivka in February, he said, we have stabilized the situation because of smart steps by our military. If the front remains stable, he said, Ukraine can arm and train new brigades in the rear to conduct a new counteroffensive later this year. Is the front stable, Elensky? Really? Have you really stabilized the situation? Really? Are you sure about that? Are you absolutely positively sure about that? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Here's a statement from the executive director of DTEK, which is, I believe it's the largest private energy company in Ukraine. And this is what he said when he was describing the Russian missile strikes on the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. According to DTEK's executive director, Sakharuk, the Russians, strike with precision up to a meter. Unfortunately, it was not possible to shoot down all the missiles. The consequences are simply colossal. It's just a field now. There is no roof. There is no equipment. Scorched earth. That is what the executive director of DTEK said. Are you sure, Elensky, everything is stabilized? I don't think so. I really, really do not think so. So that was the Washington Post covering Elensky's latest statements directed towards Congress as he makes his case. He makes the case to get another 61 billion into his pockets. So Podolyak, he gave an interview to the German publication Bild, and Podolyak, he said that Ukraine will have to retreat because the collective West is afraid of winning. That's right. They are afraid of winning. That's an interesting cope. That's an interesting cope from Podolyak. Just afraid of winning, man. Why are you guys afraid of winning? What's wrong with you, Schultz? What's wrong with you, Macron? Well, no, Macron is not afraid of winning. Macron wants to send 20,000 French soldiers into Ukraine. Scratch that. What's wrong with you, Schultz? What's wrong with you, Baerbock? Well, maybe not Baerbock. Baerbock wants to send tourist missiles to the Elensky regime. So who's afraid of winning? Schultz. Schultz is afraid of winning. Schultz is definitely afraid of winning. I can't figure out who else is afraid of winning. Maybe Schultz. Maybe just Schultz. I don't know. But Podolyak says that they're just afraid of winning. The West. Is Biden afraid of winning? I don't think so. I don't think so. Biden took on Corn Pop. If you take on Corn Pop, I don't see how you could be afraid of winning. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe they are. Maybe they are, you know. Maybe this is some psychology thing, you know. Just afraid of the fear of victory. The fear of victory prevents the collective West from defeating Russia. Maybe Podolyak's onto something. I don't know. Maybe Podolyak figured it out. They're afraid of winning. Well, the new commander of the Ukraine military, Syrsky, he actually says that Ukraine is winning. He says Ukraine is winning. He gave an interview yesterday, and he said that Ukraine is capturing more territory, more villages, more towns than Russia is capturing. No worries, no problem. No need for 61 billion, according to Syrsky, because according to Syrsky, if you look at all the territories that Ukraine has captured on one column, and then you look at all the territory and the villages and towns that Russia has captured, according to Syrsky, Ukraine is winning. It's simple. It's simple math. Real simple math. Take out a piece of paper, put all the villages and towns that Ukraine has captured, put all the villages and towns that Russia has captured, and Ukraine is winning the war. Syrsky math. Syrsky military strategy. Syrsky military strategy. Danilov, who was the Ukraine, one of the big Ukraine intel guys, allegedly he was fired the other day. And I said that most likely Danilov will be sent to the UK to become the third ambassador, the Ukraine-UK embassy threesome. Danilov, Zaluzhny, and Reznikov. That was my thinking. Danilov is going to get sent to London, and he's going to be the number 3 ambassador. And I was wrong about that. I was wrong. Danilov is going to be an ambassador, but not of the United Kingdom. He is going to be sent to Moldova. Danilov is going to be the ambassador of Ukraine to Moldova. Oh boy. Who are they trying to fool here? Who are they trying to fool? All these people that are being sent to different countries that are being reassigned. They're not being fired. They're being reassigned. This is their escape plan. Who are they trying to kid, man? This is what happened. Let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what went down. Danilov, who's scared S-less, right? He's scared that he's pooping in his pants, scared about the fact that the Russians are going to go after him, and the fact that Ukraine is losing this conflict. He went to Elensky and he said, Elensky, reassign me. I want to become ambassador somewhere. And Elensky was like, well, that's going to look bad if I reassign you. Let me say that I fired you. Is that all right? And Danilov said, say whatever the hell you want. Say you fired me. I don't care, Elensky. Reassign me now, and I'm getting the F out of Dodge. And Elensky said, Danilov's fired. And now we find out that Danilov has not been fired, but he's been reassigned as an ambassador to Moldova. That's his escape plan. That is his escape plan. So Danilov's going to take all of his money and all of his homes and all of his Bitcoin and whatever else Danilov has. He's going to take all of this stuff and he's going to park it in Moldova at first. And then I'm sure that eventually Danilov will make his way to Romania, and eventually he'll probably end up in London, either in London or in the US. But yeah, This is Danilov's escape plan. So Kuleba, the foreign minister of Ukraine, he was in India, and his goal as he was visiting India and meeting with Jaishankar was to convince India to ditch Russia and to get on the Elensky train, to get on the Elensky train to victory, right? To the Elensky train to victory. That was Kuleba's purpose in meeting with Jaishankar on his trip to India. This is what Kuleba said. On Thursday, Kuleba claimed in an interview with Indian TV channel NDTV that New Delhi's relationship with Russia is based on the Soviet legacy, which is extinct and has no future. In contrast, Ukraine-India relations have more of a future, he insisted, while suggesting that India could influence the way Russia behaves because of its close ties to Moscow. That's right, Jaishankar. Jaishankar, your future with Russia. There is no future with Russia, Jaishankar. Listen to me. Listen to me, Jaishankar. Sit down, Jaishankar. Sit down. Listen to me. There is no future with Russia. Trust me. There's no future. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Come with us. Come with me. Come with Elensky. You have a future with us. You have a future with Ukraine. Come on. Yeah, that's what Kuleba told India. That's what he told Jaishankar. You think that India is going to actually believe this? No, no. The only countries, the only foreign ministers dumb enough to believe that the future is with Ukraine are the collective West foreign ministers. They're the only ones that are doubling down and tripling down on the failure, the losing side that is the Elensky regime. Only the Europeans are that dumb enough. The collective West. India's not stupid. They are not dumb at all. They are going to stick with Russia. They're going to stick with BRICS, and this is not going to work. Kuleba's diplomacy, if you want to call it that, will fail. So the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, he said in an interview the other day that Macron's statements about sending French troops into Ukraine, he said that this was just a PR stunt, a PR trick in order to distract away from all of the failures and the controversy and the scandals that Macron is facing back home in France. The Russian foreign minister suggested that the French statements on Ukraine are designed exclusively to do PR for the president in a situation where he does not fare well at home. The media activity and calls to defeat Russia, Lavrov added, are necessary to create some kind of distraction. According to a Morning Consult poll, which measured the popularity of leaders in developed democracies, 71% of respondents disapprove of Macron's performance, second only to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's numbers, 73% disapproval. Interesting numbers there, huh? So yeah, it's a distraction according to Lavrov, and I agree. I agree with Lavrov. I think I mentioned this in many videos that I made discussing Macron's statements, that a lot of this may be just a distraction to distract away from the farmer protests, to distract away from the economic situation in France, to distract away from maybe distract away from stuff being said about his wife or stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to put up a distraction. And to be fair to Macron, it kind of worked. It kind of worked. Threaten nuclear war, threaten World War III, and you distract away from what people are saying about your marriage. it did work, I have to admit. So yeah, that's what Lavrov thinks the whole French troops in Ukraine was all about, and I think he's right. I think he is right. 71% disapproval of Macron, huh? He's behind Olaf Scholz, 73% disapproval. I read a poll which said that 73% of Germans disapprove of Olaf Scholz, but 86% of Germans that were polled have a favorable approval of Pirate Scholz. So 73% are against Olaf Scholz, but 86% actually think very highly of Pirate Scholz. That's a true poll. You see, the German people, they don't like Olaf, but they love Pirate Scholz. As do I. I think Pirate Scholz is awesome. More Pirate Scholz, less Olaf Scholz. So Germany, the parliament in Germany, they conducted a study to see if France did deploy troops into Ukraine, if this would trigger NATO Article 5. And here is what the study said. If troops of a NATO member state engage in collective self-defense, Article 51 of the UN Charter, in favor of Ukraine in an existing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and are attacked by the other party to the conflict, Russia, in the course of the battle in the conflict area, this does not constitute a case of Article 5 NATO treaty. Does not constitute Article 5 NATO treaty. So this is Germany's way of telling France, pожалуйста, go ahead. Go ahead, send your troops to Ukraine, fight the Russians all you want. But if and when those troops are annihilated by the Russian military, and they will be annihilated very quickly by the Russian military, don't call Germany, don't call NATO, because we're not obligated to come to your rescue. An interesting study by the German parliament. So let's do an update on the Crocus City Hall terrorist attack. We have some more information on the attack, and the Russian Investigative Committee, they released a statement saying that the terrorists were told to drive to the Russian-Ukrainian border. The communication was taking place via telegram, and the handlers of these terrorists, the person on the other side of this telegram communication was giving the orders via voice messages, according to the Russian Investigative Committee. And they were told to go to the border after the terrorist attack to get the rest of their reward, according to the Investigative Committee. Make your way to the Russian-Ukrainian border, make your way to Ukraine. You will be safe in Ukraine, and once in Ukraine, you will be able to pick up the rest of your money, which means that this was definitely not some sort of religious, ideological, terrorist, martyr type of attack. That's not what this was about. This was financial. The motivation, the incentive for these terrorists was financial. Here is what the Russian investigators said in their initial testimonies and during their subsequent interrogations. The suspects said that the attacks were prepared in coordination with a man who introduced himself to them under a pseudonym. The investigative committee said in a statement, he communicated with them by voice messages sent over telegram, it added, On the instructions of the coordinator, after committing the crime, the terrorists drove in a car toward the Russian-Ukrainian border to subsequently cross it and arrive in Kiev to receive the promised reward, the law enforcement agency said. The investigative committee has said it is continuing to verify the involvement of representatives of Ukrainian special services in organizing and financing the terrorist attack. That last statement is pretty revealing. The investigative committee has said it is continuing to verify the involvement of representatives of Ukrainian special services in organizing and financing the terrorist attack. And now you know why Danilov asked Elensky to be transferred to Moldova as its ambassador. Now you know why. That last statement says it all. So the Washington Post, they are reporting that the U.S., the Biden White House, has signed off on more bombs and warplanes for Israel, despite a widening rift with the Israeli government. The Biden administration continues to authorize the transfer of 2,000-pound bombs and other weapons. So as Biden is talking about a ceasefire and some sort of peace deal, and Blinken is traveling around the Middle East almost every other week, he is in the Middle East trying to put together some sort of ceasefire. The U.S. Did not veto the recent UN Security Council resolution. As all of this stuff is taking place, the Biden White House continues to send bombs and weapons to Israel. Actions, not words. It's always about actions, not words. Look at what they do. Don't listen to what they say. Always look at their actions. So let's do a clown world, huh? And we'll wrap this video up. Ukraine is going to be canceling the famous, amazing writer, columnist, playwright Bulgakov, who wrote The Master and Margarita. What else? The White Guard. He is going to get canceled in Ukraine. He was born in Kiev, but he lived 2 decades in Moscow, and it looks like Ukraine is about to cancel Bulgakov. Statues, street names, street signs, anything with Bulgakov will get canceled in Bandera, Ukraine. The Ukraine Institute of National Memory has ordered the legacy of renowned novelist and playwright Mikhail Bulgakov to be examined for compliance with the law on Russian imperial policy. The ruling represents another step in Kiev's campaign to erase Russian culture. Bulgakov, who was born in Kiev in 1891, when it was part of the Russian Empire, wrote in Russian and spent the last 2 decades of his life in Soviet Moscow, writing novels, plays, and newspaper columns. So you're going to erase, cancel one of the most famous authors and writers and replace him with what? With streets named after Bandera or who else? Or Newland. Way to go, Ukraine. EU values, EU values right there, huh? All right, that is the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Pick up some limited edition merch. We have some interesting new merchandise in the Duran shop. Or go to Reverse Gear, reversegear.shop, and pick up some cool Reverse Gear merch. The neocons are no Reverse Gear. We are Reverse Gear. Take care.